Hey there Cosmic Warriors, and welcome to the introduction video for Gemini season. Happy birthday to all of you Gemini, solar Gemini out there. It is your birthday season. I hope you have a wonderful time, a wonderful birthday. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be explaining the archetype of Gemini, followed by the Gemini house within your natal birth chart, followed by your Mercury sign, and then finishing off by looking at the third house within your natal birth chart as well. So before we do get started, let us know in the comment section if you happen to have any planets within the sign of Gemini, or if you don't have any planets in Gemini. Even what house does Gemini rule within your chart? Is Gemini maybe intercepted within your chart? What's going on within your third house? Let us know. I would also like to mention that I have created this Gemini season book. Yes, so shout out to Nicole for creating the front cover of this Gemini book. It is absolutely beautiful. So what I've done is I've created an electronic copy. This of course is the physical copy, which by the way I was sent 3 copies in the post, so I've got 1 spare copy. So therefore, if you want to actually win this free copy, then what I want you to do is just comment your Gemini placements, and then I'm just going to choose a random winner. Even if Gemini is intercepted in your chart as well, let us know. If you would like to purchase a digital format, so the ebook of this book, then I'm going to put a link to the ebook in the description box below, so you can pick up that copy. I definitely recommend picking it up because it talks about Mercury retrograde, it talks about the interceptions, so Gemini intercepted, Mercury intercepted. It talks about education within astrology, the third house ruler. Yeah, it's just a really good practical guide. Alright, so with all of those introductions out of the way, let's do this. Okay, so for more information all about archetypes, then please be sure to check out my video that I made about archetypes. But in a nutshell, an archetype is a primitive image derived from the collective unconscious. And the mental image associated with this archetype of Gemini, well, it is of a set of pillars that consists of 2 vertical lines, and it's these dual lines that represent the concept of duality and multiplicity. Most of you may know that the symbol of Gemini, of course, is of the twins, and the names of these twins are Castor and Pollux. And these twins would alternate between heaven and earth throughout the year, as they would switch. They would switch between being mortal and immortal. And this right here is a representation of changeability, versatility, and flexibility. See, it's through the symbol of Gemini that we notice an individual's curiosity towards switching things up and changing their course of direction as a way to really interact with their immediate environment. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to take this a step back, because we want to be able to identify where exactly we're coming from, and the season that we're coming from is from Taurus season. What Taurus shows us is how we remain firm-footed, grounded and stabilized after coming from Aries season that was really about us getting fired up with a lot of energy in order to get things set in motion. It's Taurus season then that really helps us attend to the seed that was planted during Aries season. So what Taurus season does is it helps us grasp an understanding as to what we value and what we appreciate in life. It's where we begin to identify what and who is valuable and reliable within our lives. And it's also where and when we identify how useful or productive our time and money is. And it's also when we identify our pleasures and our desires and our income. What we do during Taurus season is we look to the material world, and we realize that we must own certain items and eat certain foods in order to survive. Ultimately, we discover what our basic needs for survival are through Taurus. So for example, physical security. But as we enter into Gemini season, the dialogue changes, because what must any human do if they are to gain anything from the material world? Communicate. Okay, sure. You don't have to communicate in order to retrieve things from the material world. I mean, you could always steal, right? After all, Gemini does rule over the arms, the lungs, and the shoulders, and it's also associated with theft, seeing as Mercury, aka Hermes, in association with Gemini's ruling planet, Mercury. Well, Hermes would steal. He would steal from the gods. Yeah, theft can be one of those darker traits that come with Gemini energy. Both theft and lies would be some of those more darker traits. Though still, it is through the sign or archetype of Gemini that we begin to learn about the resources around us within the immediate environment. You know, where we realize that mommy and daddy, they're not gonna be around forever. So we must then focus our energy outward again, in order to speak and communicate and connect with other people and gain information from other people. So what we're doing essentially is we're using our voice, we're using our language to retrieve materials and ideas from our surroundings. But we also notice that our ideas differ from the ideas of others. For example, let's say you grew up within a certain household and you learn certain things from your family, but then another kid would live in a different household and they would learn things from their family, but then the two kids coming together into a schooling situation and they're bringing their ideas from both of their households, they're coming together and they're like, oh, you were taught this, oh, you were taught that, and then they start to have this open dialogue. Therefore, whilst Taurus can represent the habitual watering that a seed needs in order to keep surviving through its average lifespan, it's Gemini that then can represent the human standing watering the plant in the first place, where they turn and they say something like, hey Sophia, can you bring me more water from the tap please? And so naturally in this way, Gemini is associated with both communication and also technology. Then again, if we were to really bring this in just using nature completely, well then Gemini can actually represent the communication happening within nature. So the communication between the sun, between the rain, between the clouds and the atmosphere. Basically, Gemini can represent connectivity and how everything is indeed connected energetically. Even that human who called out to Sophia is connected with Sophia in some way by simply knowing her name. And just as there is communication within nature between plant to plant, between star to star, well, there's also of course communication happening within ourselves, within our own minds, and from ourselves within our own minds towards other people's minds. Therefore, it is the archetype of Gemini that represents the open dialogue that exists between everyone and everything. Indeed, it is Gemini that connects people, places, and things. It's kind of like this ever breezy air that moves between people and brings them together. So it can be a great time to get interacting and connecting with others. But even if you don't interact with others directly, you can always learn something new. Gemini is actually comprised then of mutable, meaning changeable, adaptable, flexible, and then the air element, meaning communicative and social, resulting in this highly curious energy that seeks to learn information for the sake of learning information. It's also this same mutable air energy that helps us look over any sort of projects we've been working on, so the current projects, to reassess those projects in order to identify whether or not changes need to be made, or if we want to make changes, or if we want to add new things to it. Furthermore, Gemini is ruled by the planet Mercury, and Mercury is the planet that goes retrograde the most out of all of the planets due to its very fast orbit. Just like Gemini types, they can be super fast with their tongue and also with their hands. It is Gemini energy that can be highly talkative, but even those who aren't highly talkative, they tend to think 100 things all at once. The ideas in the Gemini mind is just shooting like bam, bam, bam. Ultimately, it is a sign of Gemini that teaches us that changes must happen if we are to grow and learn. So with that in mind, we must be willing to unstick ourselves from any stubborn tendencies that we experience during Taurus season. So for example, if you have something in your life that's just weighing you down, it would be a good idea to address it or communicate it just to get it out of your system in some way. Now what I'm actually going to do is I am going to play a couple of short movie clips that I personally think are associated with Gemini. So give these a watch and then let us know what you even think as well. Right, so what you probably gathered from these clips is that Gemini is a sign of diversity and changeability. Gemini is also a sign that is about seeing double, okay? Because now the dialogue switches to a two-way street. So this two-way street can manifest into a number of different ways. So between you and your friend, you and your mom and your friend, but also from your conscious mind and your unconscious mind as well. Take for example, you are sitting down to type an article for a class project that you're doing. Your ideas are going to just flow. They're flowing into your awareness and you're going to different websites, you're going to different books, and you're learning more information. Now the conscious part of your brain is going to seek to find new information, whilst the unconscious part of your brain is going to store all of that information, so to speak. So it's like a storage room that holds all the info that you know already. So everything you've learned goes into the unconscious mind. So as you are consciously seeking new information, it's then being derived or delivered into the unconscious so that you can use it at a later stage. But what's also happening is that your unconscious mind is delivering information that you've already learned and putting it into your conscious awareness at the same time. Furthermore, the ruling planet of Gemini and also the ruling planet of Virgo within astrology, Mercury is also represented with Hermes, as I stated. So Hermes being the messenger of the gods, and Hermes would deliver facts and messages to the gods as he would fly around in his winged sandals with his staff. But really just focusing on Gemini, well, we are firstly greeted with the principle of duality. So when it does come to the Gemini house within your natal birth chart, well, this is going to show you where these dual energies are playing out. So for example, if you have a Gemini midheaven, you may juggle between two jobs. So you may be a writer, but then also a receptionist. Very similar actually with Gemini ruling the 6th house as well in that regard. Or if you have Gemini ruling your 4th house, You may alternate between 2 different homes or condos or apartments. The Gemini house can also show you where you seek amusement, flexibility, and fun. For example, if you have the sign of Gemini ruling your 2nd house within your natal birth chart, you might seek amusement by accumulating material wealth and success, kind of like this guy, Conor McGregor. Or if you have Gemini ruling your 3rd house within your natal birth chart, you might be flexible and fun when it comes to acquaintances that you meet and you interact with. Kind of like this gal, Rihanna. Furthermore, the Gemini house can also show you where you use the left side of your brain in order to be logical. So for example, if you have Gemini ruling your 9th house, you might logically justify why you believe that your morals and your ethics are correct in your mind. And an example of someone who had Gemini ruling their 9th house was none other than Hitler. Okay, so maybe that is taking things to the extreme, yes. But on a more lighter note, if you have Gemini, for example, ruling your 7th house, you might logically explain why you would get into a relationship or marry someone, kind of like Kim Kardashian. And what's interesting is that Kim Kardashian is married to Kanye West, and Kanye West is a Gemini. The Gemini house as well can also show you where you gain a reputation for being kind of flaky. So if you have Gemini ruling your 5th house, you might be flaky when it comes to love and the dating scene. Or if you have Gemini ruling your 8th house, you might be flaky when it comes to the intimate relationships you form. Meaning that the Gemini house can show you where you can be unpredictable and inconsistent. It's also an area of life by which you can pursue what seems stimulating in the moment rather than what you have previously planned. Of course, naturally, this energy can come with some implications such as cheating and theft due to the likeliness that you become pretty bored or restless. It can also be that the Gemini house can show you where you can be rather easily distracted, and it can also show you where you most likely change your mind. So we'll take Steve Carell for example. Now he has his Mars in Gemini conjunct his Gemini midheaven, and according to biography.com, he was set on a legal career, so he took classes as a pre-law student, but he spent a lot of his off time doing sketch comedy. Now, Steve Carell, he was pretty unsure as to what he wanted to pursue in a career, in terms of his career. But then he went on to have a conversation, right, this open dialogue, with his parents. And his parents asked him, well, what is it that you really enjoy doing? And he was like, well, I enjoy acting. And so he went on to pursue a career within acting. See, the thing about Gemini energy is that it can be quite indecisive. So whilst one part of you might be wanting to do something, the other part of you might not want to be doing that thing. For example, this could be you having the sign of Gemini ruling your 9th house, and you find it really difficult to decide between 2 courses to study at university. You might jump back and forth between the benefits and the challenges located within both courses. Ultimately, the Gemini house is really an area of life where we think of new ideas and we discover how to explore many options, whilst also trying to make sure that we are aware of the bigger picture as well. Therefore, it is important for us to learn through our Gemini house how to communicate without being scattered or argumentative towards others as well. For example, you might have Gemini ruling your 6th house, and so you might be learning how to communicate what you think with co-workers or other employees without becoming scattered and argumentative. Or if you have Gemini ruling your 4th house, you might be learning how to communicate what you really think with your family without becoming scattered and argumentative. Though, what does it mean to have planets within the sign of Gemini in your birth chart? Well, naturally, of course, it depends on the planet itself, but this is really the energy of this planet being placed into this changeable and interactive sign. So however this manifests is really dependent on the planet, but ultimately planets within Gemini speeds things up, okay? It gets you thinking quicker. It's also going to become curious. It's going to want to seek facts and information, and it's also going to want to make logical sense of that planet. For example, if you have Mars within the sign of Gemini, it could suggest that you're most likely going to be an active researcher and learner, and you will interact with others who are learning similar subjects, or you will show curiosity towards subjects that provide you with a sense of independence. Or if you have Mercury within the sign of Gemini, you will think quickly and communicate your ideas quickly. You might seek facts and information from others who can really hold your engagement. Or if you have Venus within the sign of Gemini, you might move pretty quickly when it comes to your relationships. So someone could become your best friend really quickly. You could get into a relationship with someone really quickly. And if a romantic partner stimulates your mind and your curiosity, maybe makes you laugh, you might seek to learn more about them. Now, if you happen to have a Gemini stellium within your natal birth chart, so meaning 4 or more planets within the sign of Gemini, well, again, it depends on the planets themselves, but that high volume of Gemini energy might result in a person who is super logical and intellectual, a type of person who's always seeking mental stimulation. But the stellium could also result in a two-faced, scatterbrained backstabber who runs around gossiping and telling stories about others. Now, what if Gemini is intercepted within your natal birth chart? Well, this would mean then that Gemini is being swallowed up within a particular house, and so it can suggest that you grew up in an environment by which communication was blocked in some way. So maybe you just find it difficult to communicate what you really think. Maybe you were told to shut up or keep quiet from expressing your thoughts and opinions on things. Maybe others would overpower you in terms of communication and you would never get a word in. There could also be a lack of curiosity with the Gemini interception, or you could be rather narrow-minded and you might refuse to listen to the thoughts and opinions of others. Now, if you have Gemini intercepted, it would be a good idea to locate Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, in order to identify how to unlock this interception in order to then integrate it into your awareness. Now, I have talked more about the Gemini interception within the Gemini book, and I've also talked about Mercury retrograde within the Gemini book, so if you want to learn more information, then definitely pick up a copy. Now, when it does come to the ruling planet of Gemini, Mercury, well, Mercury within the natal birth chart can show you how you communicate with people, places, and things based upon whichever sign Mercury is in. It can show you how, as well, you connect the dots and you exchange ideas with others. For example, if you have your Mercury in Leo, you might communicate with people, places, and things in a rather dramatic or theatrical type of way. So, for example, you might place strong emphasis on certain words that you say just to give them a dramatic effect. But then take someone who has Mercury within the sign of Aquarius, well, you might connect the dots by firstly addressing the bigger picture, and by doing so, you can then come up with many theories as to how the bigger picture was formed in the first place. And so you might actually share one of your theories with the world as a way to get them thinking outside of the box. If we were to add in the houses, so the different areas of life, well, whichever house Mercury is placed into, that will add an extra layer to how that Mercury sign is playing out within your life. For example, if we take the Mercury in Leo and we place it into the 6th house, well, you might communicate with co-workers and other employees in a dramatic way, or by bringing creative ideas into the workplace. So you could be that type of person who just puts up all these posters on the wall as a way to creatively express yourself and bring attention to the co-workers. But then take somebody with the Mercury and Aquarius placement, but then in the 4th house, well, you might place the bigger picture attitude that we talked about onto the family life or into your family home. So for example, you might decide that you want to adopt a child rather than have your own child. Now the planet Mercury can also show you how you lie and make excuses for yourself as a way to get out of doing something that you don't want to do. So yeah, manipulation can come with the Mercury Gemini energy, where we manipulate others with our words and our body language. So for example, if you have Mercury in Libra, you might lie by pretending to create peace and harmony, but the moment that that person that you're creating peace and harmony with leaves, you're then on the phone and you're going off on your partner, yapping off your mouth towards that person. Or if you have your Mercury in the sign of Taurus, you might manipulate by telling that person how valuable they are to you by saying something like, "Oh, how can you undermine my loyalty? Do you not trust me? I've been here all of this time. Look at all we've been through together." Or if you have your Mercury within the sign of Sagittarius, you might make excuses for yourself by stating that you just had too much going on at that time. So you'll forward plan, but yet you still remain in the same situation that you were in before, all as a way to avoid commitment and being fenced in. Now when it does come to the third house, your third house ruler, the third house within astrology, well, the third house can signify the stage in your life where you are essentially an older toddler. So this is pretty significant because the third house can also show you really the ways in which you were educated and how you were educated and how you learn in that regard. So it can then be connected with the early schooling. It's within the third house in the natal birth chart that we discover how we learn and how we study using the left side of the brain, and then how we process that information that we're learning. So for example, if you have Leo ruling your third house, you might have done a lot of coloring in or art as a way to learn as an older toddler, or you may have learned through play and fun and creativity. You may be very creative with the ideas that you bring forward into a certain study group. Or if you have Taurus ruling your third house, you may learn through listening to music, or by watching your family members cook, or by getting involved with the more sensual side of things, so through textures, through touch. Or you might actually learn by really doing tangible activities with your siblings. Naturally then, this means that the third house can provide us with an indication as to how we act as students during our early schooling years. I mean, Aries on the third house could suggest that you would shout out answers and you would challenge the teacher and talk back. But yet, Libra on the third house, you might have been that type of student who would discuss answers with your friend sitting next to you, possibly resulting in the teacher shouting at you because you're chatting it up with your friend. But then the moment that you're asked to quiet down, you act all, "Me? Never." However, it is also through the third house that we learn about how we interact with the immediate environment. So how we interact with our siblings, our neighbors, our cousins, our aunties, our uncles, our classmates, our peers. So for example, if you have Virgo ruling your third house, you might interact with your siblings in a very critiquing way or a practical way, where you're always trying to help even though your help was not asked for. Or you might have the sign of Pisces on your third house, suggesting that you might interact with your own cousins in a compassionate and passive way. So the opinions of your cousins, they might blend with your opinions even if you disagree. The third house can also provide an indication into how you actually move throughout your local city or neighborhood or area. It's also showing you how you take short distance trips, so how that process kind of goes, and so ultimately suggesting that the third house can show you an indication into how you commute. Take someone with Gemini ruling the third house. Well, you might take frequent trips to the bookstore, to the grocery store, to the clothing store. You might also talk on the phone whilst you're doing so you could be doing two things at once whilst you're commuting, though you often might forget things due to this, but ultimately you might move rather quickly as you do commute. So with that in mind, the third house can also provide us with an indication into the types of vehicles or transport that we use. So if you have Capricorn of the third, you might drive a traditional car, or you might think of ways of saving money when it comes to commuting. So you might decide to take the bus or walk if you must. But then somebody with Cancer on the third house, well, you might drive a family car, or you might change your car or vehicle frequently based upon how you feel. Overall, it is the archetype of Gemini that signifies changeability and flexibility. And it's these things that can manifest into whichever house or area of life that Gemini rules within your natal birth chart. It is then the planet Mercury that will show you both how and where you communicate and learn most predominantly, as well as how you interchange information and ideas as a way to connect information that you're already learning. And lastly, it is the third house that will show you how you interact with your immediate environment through the likes of early schooling, siblings, neighbors, short distance trips, and transportation. Okay then, Cosmic Warriors, so that concludes the introduction video for Gemini season as we explained the Gemini house, the Mercury sign, and the third house within your birth chart. Thank you so much for watching, thank you for subscribing, and of course if you would like to see more videos from myself and you have not yet subscribed, then go right ahead and click that subscribe button so you can keep up to date with the videos throughout Gemini season. And I will be back with another video very, very soon. Bye!